They say time heals all wounds. But I don't think those people ever lost a child. Time doesn't heal. It buries. And if you let it, it makes you forget just enough to hate yourself for it. My name is Gregory Hargrove. Federal Judge, 17th District Court. But long before the robe, the gavel, and the courtroom, I was just a father. August 12, 2005. That's the day my life ended. Even though I kept breathing afterward. We were at Crescent Park. My daughter Emily had just turned 4. She loved balloons. She loved ducks. And she loved running ahead of me, like she was already chasing the future. She wore her favorite pink overalls, the ones with the butterfly patch on the pocket. And around her tiny neck hung a necklace. A small golden bird. One wing cracked. I gave it to her that morning. Even broken birds still sing, sweetheart. She looked up at me and whispered, "Just like me, Daddy?" I didn't know what she meant at the time. But I smiled. Told her she was perfect. And then I turned around to throw away some trash. It took 8 seconds. 8 seconds. I've replayed them in my head thousands of times. The sound of the wind. The squeak of a balloon. The faint rustle of leaves. When I turned back, she was gone. No scream. No cry. No struggle. Just gone. I ran. I screamed her name. I grabbed strangers, begged them to help. Within 15 minutes the entire park was on alert. 30 minutes later, the police arrived. 2 hours after that, dogs. Helicopters. We searched every trash can. Every bush. Every bathroom stall. Witnesses claimed to have seen a green van parked near the trail entrance. But no one saw a license plate. No one saw a driver. No one saw Emily again. Days passed. Then weeks. Then a month. We held a candlelight vigil. A news crew came. I looked directly into the camera and said, "Emily, if you're out there, I'm still looking." That clip aired on national TV. People sent prayers. Cards. Toys. But no child. And then the calls stopped. Reporters stopped visiting. Even the posters began to peel away in the rain. Time doesn't heal. It silences. My wife, Marla, tried to stay strong. But she was grieving someone who was still missing, not dead. It's a strange kind of hell. We started arguing. She blamed me for turning my back. I blamed her for not holding Emily's hand tighter. 6 months later, she packed her bags and left. Took the cat. Left the ring. She didn't even say goodbye. And I deserved it. Because I wasn't just grieving. I was rotting. I left my job at the law firm. Took a bench position. Some said it was a promotion. But for me, becoming a judge was a sentence I gave myself. I didn't want justice. I wanted to punish. Not others. Me. 17 years passed. I stopped going to parks. Stopped celebrating holidays. I never remarried. Never stopped wondering if Emily was alive. Or buried somewhere I'd never find. I still had her necklace's twin. I had bought 2 of them. One for her. One for me. I kept mine locked in a drawer until the day I forgot where I put it. I told myself it was time to move on. But I never did. Until last Thursday morning. Court was in session. Routine docket. Petty theft. Vandalism. 1 assault charge. And then, case number 742B, Elena Grace Winters. 17. No prior convictions. Charged with robbery and assault on an officer. I glanced at the file. The usual foster system tragedy. Orphaned. Abandoned. Forgotten. In and out of homes. The last line said, Found in a church hallway at age 5. I didn't even lift my head until the bailiff said, "Defendant, step forward." And that's when I saw her. Thin. Pale. Eyes red from crying. She wore a hoodie 3 sizes too big. Ripped jeans. Cheap shoes. But what stopped me? What pulled the air from my lungs? Was the necklace. That gold bird. That cracked wing. The same exact one I'd given Emily the day she vanished. I leaned forward. Looked closer. It couldn't be. But it was. Her name wasn't Emily. But it could have been. Her birth record was blank. No biological parents. No date of birth. Only a foundling. Dropped off in a church hallway. Wrapped in a red flannel blanket. With one thing around her neck. The necklace. Could she be? Could this girl be the daughter I lost? I felt the floor fall beneath me. But I couldn't ask. Couldn't show anything. I was the judge. She was the defendant. And the law doesn't care about grief. Or coincidence. Or long-lost daughters. But I couldn't stop staring at that necklace. Because deep down, somewhere in the part of me I had buried for years, I knew. Emily Rose might be alive. And she might be standing in front of me. On trial. Wearing a broken bird. And waiting for a verdict that would change both of our lives forever. She stood just 10 feet from me. Hands shaking. Lips dry. Eyes empty, like someone who gave up on being heard a long time ago. I glanced down at her file again. Elena Grace Winters. 17. Foster care since age 5. Found in the hallway of St. Catherine's Church. Wrapped in a red flannel blanket. No note. No ID. Just a necklace. The same necklace now resting over her chest. A small gold bird. One wing cracked. Still shining, even after all those years. I took a breath. Steadied myself. And began. "Miss Winters," I said. "You're charged with robbery, assault, and resisting arrest. Do you understand the charges?" She nodded. Barely audible. "Yes, Your Honor." "What do you plead?" A pause. Then softly. "Guilty." The room was quiet. But my mind was screaming. I leaned forward. "Would you like to say anything before we proceed?" She hesitated. Then she lifted her head, and for the first time, our eyes met. "I wasn't trying to hurt anyone," she said. "I didn't mean to take anything. I was hungry." My heart cracked. The same way that necklace had. "Why didn't you ask for help?" I asked. She laughed, a short, bitter sound. "I've asked before. People say no with their eyes long before their mouths move." She looked down. And I saw her fingers touch the necklace. That's when I couldn't hold it anymore. "Where did you get that?" I asked, trying to sound neutral. She looked up, confused. "This?" "Yes. The necklace." She paused, then said, "I've always had it. Since I was a kid. The nuns at the shelter told me they found me with it. Said it might have belonged to my parents." I swallowed hard. Too hard. It was the same. The scar behind her right ear. The small freckle under her left eye. The way she tilted her head when nervous. Emily used to do that too. But it couldn't be. I couldn't let myself believe that. Not here. Not now. Not without proof. I cleared my throat. "Miss Winters, do you recall anything before the church?" She shook her head. "No. Just flashes. A blue blanket. Ducks. I think there were ducks. Maybe a park." My blood ran cold. Crescent Park had a duck pond. Emily loved feeding them. It couldn't be coincidence. It was too specific. Too close. I looked around the courtroom. Nobody else knew what was happening. To them, it was a tired case. Another troubled teen. But to me, this was the ghost of a life I thought I buried. And she was breathing in front of me. "Do you have anyone?" I asked. "Family, friends?" She smiled, not happily, but like someone who knew the answer too well. "No. I've been in 7 homes. Some good. Some not. But none permanent." I felt something in my chest twist. How many birthdays had I missed? How many nights had she cried herself to sleep, thinking no one wanted her? "I read here you changed your name." They gave me Elena at the church. But Grace. I chose that later. I thought maybe, if I had a name that meant something good, people would see me differently. Grace. Emily's middle name was Grace. I had to stop. "Miss Winters," I said, trying to hide the shake in my voice, "due to the emotional nature of this testimony, I'm going to call a brief recess." She looked startled, maybe even afraid. "Am I in trouble?" "No," I said. "Not yet." I banged the gavel. Court recessed for 20 minutes. I stood up quickly, heart pounding. I had to know. I had to be sure. I walked into my chambers and locked the door. My hands were shaking as I opened the drawer. There it was, the twin necklace. Same chain. Same broken bird. I placed it on the table beside hers in my mind. 2 pieces. 1 story. I grabbed my phone. Dialed a private contact at the juvenile records office. "I need a DNA test run on a minor," I said. "Urgent. Quiet. Don't log it. No questions." They owed me favors. They wouldn't ask. I stared at the necklace. My reflection flickering in the gold. Could it be? Could this girl, this defendant I nearly sentenced, be the same child I lost 17 years ago? No. Not could. She was. Every part of me already knew it. But law requires proof. And so does healing. And if I was right, justice wouldn't be enough. I'd need to give her something no courtroom ever could. A family. Back in my chambers, I stared at the necklace sitting on the table. It didn't just shine, it screamed. It dragged up memories I had buried so deep, I didn't think I could feel them anymore. I had sent in the DNA request. They told me it would take 24 hours. But time felt like it stopped ticking. I sat down. And suddenly I was back in 2005. Emily used to leave tiny drawings under my pillow. Birds. Stars. Smiling stick figures labeled me plus daddy. She'd wait to see if I found them before work. She'd giggle when I did. "Your hair is always messy," she once told me. "And your shoes never match." She wasn't wrong. She had a way of seeing everything, even things adults pretend not to notice. She had a tiny scar behind her ear from falling off a tricycle. She hated peace. She thought all cats were girls and all dogs were boys. Every memory now felt like a knife in my chest. Because the girl who stood in front of me earlier had the same scar. The same laugh. The same sad eyes. And that necklace. The one I had picked out in a shop downtown, hand-carved gold, custom-made. Only 2 existed. I bought both. One for her. One for me. Now they were both in my courtroom. Separated for 17 years. That night, I couldn't sleep. I pored over every case file I had, trying to distract myself. Did she cry at night in those foster homes? Did anyone ever hug her on her birthday? Did she think we abandoned her? And most of all, did she remember me? The next morning, the envelope arrived. No label. Just a red stamp. Confidential. I locked my chamber door and tore it open. DNA result, 99.97% parental match. I dropped the paper. sat down, and cried. For the first time in 17 years, I let it out. She was my daughter. There was no doubt. But now came the hardest part. What was I supposed to do? Legally, I couldn't preside over a case where the defendant was my child. Ethically, I should have recused myself the moment I suspected. But emotionally, how do you step away from your own blood, when she just came back from the dead? Court resumed at 9 a.m. She stood again in front of me. Still quiet. Still tired. But now, I saw it. She looked like me. The shape of her jaw. The way her hands curled when she was nervous. I took a deep breath. "Miss Winters," I said, trying not to tremble, "thank you for returning to court." She nodded politely. I wanted to run to her. To hold her. To say I'm sorry. To say I never stopped looking. But I had to stay the judge. For just a little while longer. She spoke before I could continue. I wanted to apologize for yesterday. I wasn't trying to be disrespectful. You weren't, I said gently. She continued. It's just, people look at me like I'm trouble before I open my mouth. But you didn't. That hit harder than she knew. She said. When I was little, I used to dream that my real parents were looking for me. I thought maybe they'd left a clue. The necklace, maybe. Or a name. Or something. I swallowed hard. My throat felt like fire. Do you still believe that? I asked. She shrugged. Not really. Dreams don't pay court fines. I felt a tear crawl up from the corner of my eye, but I blinked it away. Miss Winters, I said, voice steady, I need to ask you something important. She looked confused, but nodded. Do you remember anything at all, from before the church? She hesitated. Sometimes, in dreams. A man's voice. A park. Ducks. A song about flying. I nearly collapsed. That was our song. Even broken birds still sing. My hands trembled. But my voice didn't. I said. Thank you. That's all for now. The courtroom was still. Everyone else thought this was a routine moment. But I had just met my daughter for the first time in 17 years. She didn't know me. Didn't remember my face. But somewhere deep inside, she remembered the song. And that was enough. I called for a lunch recess. And when the room emptied, I stayed behind. Alone. At the bench. I placed the second necklace, my copy, on the desk. Stared at it beside the file. I had sentenced hundreds. Freed dozens. Destroyed lives. Saved others. But I had never been tested like this. What do you do? When the person standing trial is the very reason your heart still beats? I didn't know. But I knew I was running out of time. There are rules and law. And then, there's everything else. What do you do when justice collides with blood? By 2 p.m., I had made my decision. I walked back into the courtroom, calm on the outside, shaking within. All rise, the bailiff called. I sat down. Looked at her. And in that moment, I wanted to scream to the world. That's my daughter. But I didn't. Instead, I adjusted the mic and said, before we continue, I have a legal matter to address. I cleared my throat. As of this moment, I am formally recusing myself from this case due to a discovered personal conflict of interest. Whispers spread across the courtroom. The clerk looked shocked. The bailiff looked at me, unsure. I didn't explain. I simply stood, tapped my gavel one final time, and walked out. I turned my back on the robe. On the bench. On the law, just for a moment. But I had to. Because what was about to happen wasn't about justice. It was about truth. I met her in the hallway 10 minutes later. She was sitting alone on the bench. hands in her lap, eyes low. She saw me approach and stood up quickly. "Am I in trouble?" she asked. "No," I said. "Not at all. I wanted to speak with you. Privately." She hesitated, then followed me into a side conference room. It was small. Quiet. No cameras. No bailiffs. Just me and her. And 17 years of silence between us. She sat across from me. I took out the envelope. Set it gently on the table. She looked at it. Then at me. "What is that?" she asked. I opened it. Slid the page toward her. "That's a DNA report," I said. "It proves something." She didn't speak. She just looked down at the page. Her lips moved silently as she read. Line by line. Until she reached the final part. 99.97% parent-child match. She looked up at me. Confused. Pale. "What does this mean?" I couldn't hold it anymore. "It means I'm your father." Silence. Her mouth opened. But no sound came out. Tears filled her eyes. She whispered, "No. That can't be. My parents, they left me." I shook my head. "You were taken from me." From a park. Crescent Park. August 12, 2005. She sat back. Covered her mouth. I remember, ducks. Balloons. A man's hand. Then nothing. I nodded slowly. "You were 4. You disappeared in seconds. And I spent 17 years looking." She stood. Paced. Her breath unsteady. "I used to dream that someone was out there. That someone remembered me. But I stopped believing that." "I never stopped," I said. She turned, looked me in the eyes, and said, "You really think I'm her?" I didn't answer. I pulled out the second necklace. The twin. Placed it beside hers. 2 birds. 2 cracked wings. 1 broken family, now whole. Her hands trembled. She sat down again. Picked them both up. Compared them. Then softly, she whispered, "I used to sing something when I was little. But I don't know where it came from." I nodded. And said it with her. "Even broken birds still sing." She froze. Looked up. And in that moment, she knew. She began to cry. Not like a teenager. But like a 4-year-old girl who had waited 17 years to be found. I stood. Walked to her. Opened my arms. And she fell into them. We didn't say anything for a long time. There were no words big enough for that moment. Just breath. And tears. And time finally catching up to us. I held her like I should have all those years ago. And when she whispered, "I thought you forgot me," I said, "I never stopped looking." The next morning, court resumed. But I wasn't the one behind the bench. Judge Leary, a friend and colleague, had taken over the case. I briefed him quietly the night before, shared the DNA results in confidence. He understood. The courtroom looked the same. But everything had changed. She walked in quietly, eyes flicking toward where I used to sit. I gave her a small nod from the back row. She smiled, just barely. For the first time, she wasn't wearing the hoodie. She wore a blue blouse. Hair pulled back. The necklace still around her neck. And in her eyes, not just pain, but light. Judge Leary adjusted his glasses and began reading. "Miss Elena Grace Winters, due to recent developments in your personal history, as well as verified mitigating circumstances related to your case." He paused. Looked at her gently. "You are hereby sentenced to 6 months of rehabilitative counseling, community service under supervision, and enrollment in an educational support program." A gasp came from someone in the gallery. But I stayed silent. He continued. Furthermore, given the established biological connection and family reunification efforts, custody and legal guardianship are recommended for review. She blinked, stunned, then turned to look at me. She didn't cry. She didn't fall apart. She just nodded, strong. Ready. The gavel struck. Court is adjourned. Afterward, I met her outside. She held the file folder, her whole past, wrapped in manila paper. So, she said. Now what? I smiled. Now, I said, we build new memories. She looked down at the necklace. I still don't remember everything, she whispered. I still wake up in the middle of the night, afraid. That's okay, I said. You don't have to remember everything. I remember the ducks, she said. And a song. What song? She hesitated, then sang softly. Even broken birds still sing. Tears burned my eyes. I placed a hand on her shoulder. And so do broken fathers, I said. Weeks passed. We filled out paperwork. Set appointments. Started therapy. I helped her get her GED. She helped me learn how to cook without burning toast. She called me Greg at first. Then, Sir. Eventually, one evening while brushing her hair in the mirror, she said it. Softly. Dad? I turned. Choked up. Yes? She smiled. I think I'm ready to come home now. Some wounds never fully heal. But some grow into something stronger. Not just scar tissue. But truth. Connection. Family. I lost my daughter once. But I found her again. In a courtroom, wearing a broken bird. She wasn't a defendant. She was a miracle. A second chance. And this time, I wouldn't look away.